And we're live. And are currently muted. Terry, we need to start over. Yeah. Give us just a second, folks. We're having some technical difficulties. Okay, how's that working? All right, good. Participants are joining us this morning via their computers on WebEx or through their phones and are currently muted, as I just was. I'll describe the meeting format and how to participate in just a moment. But first, if you're having any technical issues right now, you may need to hang up or log off and then dial back in or reconnect through your WebEx. If that doesn't work, please contact WebEx Help. I'm going to give you that phone number here. WebEx Help phone number, 866-229-3239. We're looking forward to your questions, and the team is ready to answer. After the presentation, we'll describe and display instructions for asking a question. Keep in mind that after this meeting, you can continue to ask questions or provide comments anytime through June 30th by visiting the online public meeting on the project website. That's at valleymetro.org/capital. So the format for today's meeting is a short presentation, then the remainder of the meeting will be open for questions and answers. Please note that this event is being recorded and we will post it to the project website. So now I'd like to go ahead and begin the presentation by introducing Darren Lozano. Darren is the CapitolI 10 West Project Manager with Valley Metro.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everybody. My name is Darren Lozano, and thank you again for participating in this session. With me this morning are Omar Peters and Joe Rakowski from Valley Metro and Marcus Coleman with the City of Phoenix. Once the presentation is complete, Omar, Joe, and Marcus will join me in answering your questions. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the project and current status. This information is available with additional detail through the online public meeting on the project website, and we hope that if you haven't already, you'll visit the site, view the information, and provide your input. Now let's get started. The CapitolI 10 West Light Rail Extension Project is part of the voter-approved Regional Transportation Plan and is designed to help meet travel demand in the West Valley and improve connections to important activity areas like government centers and entertainment facilities. Phase 1 of the project extends from the existing light rail system in downtown Phoenix to the Arizona State Capitol. Phase 2 extends from the state capitol west along I-10 to the 79th Avenue Park and Ride. In 2012, after extensive public involvement and technical analysis, the Phoenix City Council approved a route that travels west from downtown to the I-17 frontage road, north to I-10, then west within the freeway right-of-way to the 79th Avenue Park and Ride. The project team is reevaluating the Phase 1 portion of the route from downtown to the Capitol. This is because the downtown hub portion of the South Central Light Rail Extension Project created opportunities to consider better ways to connect from downtown to the state capitol. The project team is also evaluating different types of transit for the Phase 2 route, as well as a possible extension to Desert Sky Mall. Reevaluating the Phase 1 route options began about 3 years ago and included community input and technical analysis, which resulted in identifying 4 potential route options that were discussed with the community earlier this year. Since then, technical analysis and stakeholder input have continued to where we're at today with identifying a leading alternative. Based on feedback from this past Tuesday's live call-in session, we're going to review all 4 of the options again here. Please note that all 4 options have been and will continue to be available for more detailed review on the project website. The first option is the 2012 approved route. The Phase 1 section of this route uses Washington Street for the westbound track and Jefferson Street for the eastbound track between 3rd Avenue and 8th Avenue. At 8th, both tracks travel on Jefferson to 18th Avenue or 19th Avenue, then north to Van Buren to connect with Phase 2 of the project. The next option, option A, uses Washington Street for the westbound track and Jefferson for the eastbound track between 3rd and 8th Avenue. At 8th Avenue, both tracks are on Washington Street, transitioning to Adams Street at about 16th Avenue, just east of Wesley Bowling Plaza. Both tracks travel on Adams to 18th Avenue, then north to Van Buren to connect with Phase 2. Both directions of tracks are closer to some neighborhoods like Oakland and Woodland, but a concern is that it is very difficult to fit 2 tracks while also accommodating bicycle lanes, bus routes, and travel lanes for cars without encroaching on adjacent properties. Option B has the westbound track on Washington and the eastbound track on Jefferson from 3rd Avenue to 15th Avenue. Then both tracks travel on Washington for the short distance to about 16th Avenue, where they transition to Adams Street, then north on 18th Avenue to Van Buren to connect with Phase 2. The single track loop on part of this route allows for better access yes? Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but having a little bit of issue with the audio. Could I ask you please to describe option B location again? It was cutting out a little bit there.
It was cutting out? Sure. Let me go ahead and repeat.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so again, option B has the westbound track on Washington and the eastbound track on Jefferson from 3rd Avenue to 15th Avenue. Then both tracks travel on Washington for the short distance to about 16th Avenue, where they transition to Adams Street, then north on 18th Avenue to Van Buren to connect with Phase 2. The single track loop on part of the route allows for better access from more locations along Washington and Jefferson, but still is a tight fit along the part that is double track along Washington Street. Option C has light rail traveling westbound on Washington Street and eastbound on Jefferson Street between downtown and the Capitol, connecting the westbound and eastbound tracks along 18th Avenue. This loop option is similar to how light rail currently operates on Washington and Jefferson Streets east of downtown. Option C has emerged as a leading alternative route for the Phase 1 area based on the analysis and community input received to this point. This option rose to the top primarily because it optimizes access for a higher number of current and future residential and employment centers by having light rail along 2 separate roads as opposed to a single road option. It reduces impact to traffic, buses, right-of-way, and culturally sensitive areas such as Wesley Bowling Memorial Plaza. This option also more easily accommodates bicycle lanes on both Washington and Jefferson Streets, and it is consistent with and supports state agency and city planning and economic development goals for the area. A potential extension of the Phase 2 route, which is the section along I-10, is also being evaluated. The current end of line is at the 79th Avenue Park and Ride. The potential extension being considered would extend the end of line 1 mile north to serve Desert Sky Mall and other key destinations in that area. Extending this route to Desert Sky Mall is consistent with future development goals. It would connect to key activity centers, which would increase the project ridership, but it would also increase the overall cost of the project. Also for the Phase 2 route, the project team is looking at different types of transit, specifically an exclusive busway. An exclusive busway would operate on the same route and in the same manner as light rail, but using rubber-tired vehicles. only transit vehicles would be allowed on the exclusive busway. Many different factors will be considered in evaluating the Phase 2 transit types, including environmental impacts, cost, community input, ridership potential, and coordination with West Valley cities. Other factors to consider include that light rail would provide a one-seat ride. That is, no transfers would be required to get to Sky Harbor, downtown Phoenix, or downtown Mesa. Additionally, exclusive busway is more flexible with more potential to use new technologies as they develop in the future. Evaluations so far has indicated that the travel speed will be similar between light rail and the exclusive busway. Light rail has the capacity to carry more passengers. Exclusive busway would be about 40 to 50% less expensive to build than light rail. Light rail has the potential to attract about 40% more riders than exclusive busway, and light rail has greater economic development potential. Stations for both light rail and exclusive busway could be built like stations on the current light rail system are built. However, exclusive busway stations could also be built to include bypass lanes that would allow buses to travel faster by skipping stops. Current rapid or express bus service could also use these lanes to travel faster between downtown Phoenix and the West Valley. We're also considering how long it would take to complete each transit type option being considered for Phase 2. Estimates based on typical experience show that light rail and exclusive busway would each take about 4 years to design, with construction taking about 5.5 years for light rail and 4.5 years for exclusive busway. As the study progresses, the project team will continue to provide project information, seek community input, and coordinate with the state of Arizona to finalize a recommendation for a Phase 1 route. Valley Metro anticipates presenting a Phase 1 route recommendation to Phoenix City Council later this summer or in early fall. The team will continue to analyze transit types for Phase 2, as well as a potential extension to Desert Sky Mall. Recommendations on those items are expected by the end of 2020. That concludes the presentation. Just a reminder that you can review this information in more detail by visiting the online public meetings at valleymetro.org/capital. Again, that's valleymetro.org/capital. Now we'll start the Q&A portion of the meeting, and I'll turn it over to Terry to review how to ask a question in this online format. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. So let's go ahead and begin that question and answer portion of the meeting. For those of you using WebEx, you can raise your hand to verbally ask a question, or you can use the Q&A function to type in a question. The project team will answer your questions either way you submit them. All of these WebEx instructions are showing on your screen, and we'll be toggling back and forth between the two methods, either raising your hand or using the Q&A. For those of you who are joining us by phone, just press *3 if you'd like to ask a question, and this gives us a hand raise signal. When it's your turn to speak, we'll call on you and your line will be unmuted. When you finish speaking, press *3 again to remove the hand raise signal. And as a reminder, if you're having any technical issues, please contact WebEx Help. I'm going to give you that number again, 866-229-3239. Haley Estelle with Valley Metro is managing the questions queue, so I will check in with Haley to see if we have any questions in the queue.
Good morning. Thank you, Terry. We do have a question in the queue. I'm going to go ahead and have Jean unmuted. Jean, this is Haley. I'm going to unmute your line. When I do that, you'll get a message on your phone that says that you've been unmuted and you'll be live with our panelists. You're unmuted, Jean.
Okay. Thank you for having this meeting. I know this is a difficult time for people to get connected. but I do appreciate you making this possible. My name is Gene Derry. I am currently the vice chair of the Maryvale Village Planning Committee. I have been on that committee for 12 years, so I have heard everything that Valley Metro has stated about the I-10 West Extension over the last 12 years. So I don't have a question. I just basically have a comment. There are a number of people who work with Valley Metro and also Phoenix Transit who knows that I'm a very strong advocate of mass transit, have strong opinions about light rail. I think it is a necessity to be coming out here to the west side. Always felt that way. I've had the pleasure of being on light rail before light rail was ever considered in the city of Phoenix, because I happen to be from England and been at the Docklands light rail system in London. I've seen what has happened in London with the TOD design that came from that light rail being built, and so it's not something it's something I'm not new about. I just want to say this, that the last presentation that Valley Metro made before the Village Planning Committee, which was a few months ago, they were asking how we felt about a bus-only lane on the north edge of I-10 instead of light rail. I feel that's not really the way that's not a good way. I mean, the original idea of the I-10 extension was to eliminate traffic on the I-10 from the west side, also to lower our emissions into the valley, and that is the way it's been presented to the federal government as from what I understand for the last 12 years, that was one of the reasons why we wanted wanted federal funding to build this. Also, I know it's planned to go out to 79th Avenue and McDowell to the park and ride out in this side of town. But I do also wish to state that a number of years ago when the village did the Maryvale Core Plan and was participated in, and we had at least 300 participants in that plan outside the village committee. And we all agreed that we wanted that light rail to continue up to 79th Avenue and Thomas to the new transit center that was built just a few years ago at that place. For those who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, that the Desert Sky Transit Center is one of the busiest transit centers in the valley, on Valley Metro. In fact, they're talking about a bus rapid on Thomas Road to help relieve some of the work on participation on there, getting people on their way sooner. So, but basically, that's what I wanted to say, was just to provide some information to everybody about what I know over the last 12 years about this route. Thank you.
Gene, thank you. It's nice to hear you. And I know you have been very much involved over the past several years, and we very much appreciate your involvement in your comments and participating in the study. Haley, next question.
Sure. So we have a question that was submitted by a Q&A. I'll go ahead and read that aloud for the panelists, and then we do have somebody who's interested in speaking after that. The question that's been submitted is, how has community input shaped the preference for option C? Was this the most popular option?
Thank you. I think I will answer just very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Darren to answer it from a bit more of the technical perspective. Yes, with the stakeholders that we have spoken with, which have been numerous, and through the previous public outreach efforts, option C was the most popular option, but there were also very important, obviously, technical reasons why this particular option has risen to the top. So let me turn that over to Darren.
Sure, thank you, Terry. Again, I'll start, and I may turn over to some of our other technical teams to answer as well. So one thing I want to start with, if you recall in the presentation, it's been about 3 years since we've really been looking at phase one. So about 3 years ago, we looked at different feasible options to actually make that connection happen that was something other than the selected alternative. Now, we came up with those alternatives over the past couple of years. And again, in January, the idea was to receive public input. Now, the way we created those alternatives was also talking to the community to ask what's important for the phase one option. And a couple of things that I wrote down and I'll mention here that we heard are, number one, we want an alternative that serves the residential areas of Oakland and Woodland Historic District. And the other thing we heard is we want to make this a multimodal corridor. We know that the buses have their own exclusive lane in both along Washington Street. We have bicycles as well. So we wanted to come up with some options that met those criteria and then ultimately come to one that seems to make everything work at this point. And that's where we're at with the leading alternative. So I'd say the community helped us shape and form the alternatives. Now, as Terry mentioned, has the community shaped the preference for option C? In January, that was the first time we actually showed the 4 different options to the public and presented them. And we had a survey that was paired with that, and the results did show that most people that responded to those surveys did favor this option C as the leading alternative. In addition to that, we certainly did have several community meetings just other than the January public meeting. And Terry, I don't know if you want to expand upon that, but we've had a lot of coordination over the last year. Terry or Marcus would like to, if you'd like to add.
I will, unless Marcus, I'll defer to you if you wanted to jump in. Otherwise, I can answer. Okay, I'll go ahead. Just interrupt me, Marcus, if you want to add something. But yes, we've met with numerous community groups, neighborhood organizations. We've met with a big stakeholder, obviously, with the Capitol Mall area, our various governmental agencies, departments, entities. We've had several meetings with them. Also, as Jean mentioned, with the VPCs. So in addition to the public meeting, a lot of individual and group discussions, presentations, and gathering input.
Yeah, I'll just say I think you answered that well, both of you guys.
All right.
Nothing to add.
Haley?
Thanks, Terry. Steve Jennings would like to make a comment. Steve, I see you on our participant list. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. When I do that, you'll be live with the panelists. Good morning,
okay,
Steve. You're unmuted.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Good. Well, thank you very much for taking your time on a Saturday morning here to take whatever comments you can get from the public. We appreciate that, and we appreciate the long slog you guys have done in getting this thing planned and making the tough decisions that you make on this, and it's appreciated. I'm a supporter of Valley Metro and an admirer of the process you guys go through, the South Extension, the whole thing you're going through now. I live at 17th Ave in Fillmore, and I'm kind of kitty corner from the Royal Paper recycler. There's an asphalt company here. There are landscapers that park their vehicles in a parking lot, and their crews come in the morning, and about the time it's getting light, people walk in from the bus route. People ride their bicycles to work. I'm a member of the Oakland Neighborhood Association. You've met with us twice. You've come out and listened to us. And I think our neighborhood association officially favors Plan A, and the idea there being that both routes would be together. And I myself, and I talked to one of the business owners over on Grand Avenue. You know, I'm sorry that Van Buren is out of consideration because that's the retail life of this neighborhood. There are entertainment venues, there are restaurants, there is fast food. It is where the foot traffic of this neighborhood exists. And as a supporter of Valley Metro, I worry, you know, the state capital area is a ghost town at night. And when you're going to be running trains back and forth, they're going to be empty at night. They're going to be lit up and empty, and that's bad advertising for Valley Metro, frankly. Sometimes I ride, I'm 69, but I'm a bicycle rider. My wife's 62. Sometimes we ride over to Starbucks at Park Central and have a cup of coffee, and you can see the, you know, before they built the medical school there, you could watch the light rail going by. And you could tell by the sound of it, you know, how many people were riding it. And I noticed through the South Central extension process and some of the public comments, people notice, you know, whether the buses are full, how many people riding them, how many people riding the light rail. So I just think, you know, that whole Washington Jefferson thing is sort of fraught with dangers for Valley Metro. It makes sense in a lot of ways. I imagine, you know, you get the state employees and you're hoping to. And I used to live in Salt Lake City, you know, and when they got the light rail, you know, it took the Olympics to get the light rail there, to get the public to vote for it. And when they finally ran an extension up to the University of Utah, the thing came alive. And maybe that will be a big deal that it comes over to the state offices. But I do worry about those aspects of it. And I wish it was coming down Van Buren. I think the bicycle lanes and the other aspects you're taking into consideration are very important when you talk about separating the routes and how it's easier to do that way. So that's kind of all the comments I wanted to make. But I also wanted to just, you know, express appreciation for what you're doing and keep it up. And we're out here supporting you. Thanks very much.
Steve, thank you. We appreciate you giving up your time on Saturday morning to join us, and thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. Haley, do we have additional questions?
We do. We have several people in the queue, so I appreciate everybody's patience this morning. I have a call-in user that's interested in making a comment or asking a question. Caller, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. When I do that, you'll get a message on your phone that says that you've been unmuted and you'll be live with our panelists. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now. Caller, you've been unmuted.
All right. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, you sound great. Thank you.
Perfect. Right on. So my name is Ryan Leith. I'm a former student at the ASU downtown campus and currently with the Urban Phoenix Project. I just wanted to echo a little bit of the concerns about the route option C versus the route option A as it kind of goes through the capital area. Really did notice that a lot of the activity in that area is towards the north, both on Washington, then up to Van Buren, and it seemed a little bit difficult for me, both on that point and then the wayfinding point, to separate the lines through that area. While I do hope to see some bike lanes through there, I think it might be a little bit difficult to make that decision based on just allowing space for bike lanes. When we see getting bike lanes in the downtown area is a very long process, and we could definitely see them in other areas. But besides that, I did want to also ask what the intention was of the extension staying on the I-10 route and running away from the surface streets, as economic development is a really big aspect of why something like this, whether it's light rail or bus rapid transit style. What is the hope for economic development when we're keeping the line on the highway? How are we planning to get people to want to leave the train or the bus and have it not just serve as a connector from Desert Sky Mall to the downtown? Is there a plan for that level of economic development?
Great question. Thank you. Darren?
Sure, I can start, and then I'll have Marcus add in from the city perspective. But thank you for the question regarding I-10. And in terms of actually economic development, one of the opportunities that we saw as we selected this alignment was that there's opportunity at the potential station locations. At the time it was selected, there certainly was a lot of vacancy around the station locations, which is why they were selected. Twofold. One is because they provided opportunity to locate stations and a potential park and ride at 59th Avenue. And the second thing was exactly that, to draw the economic development along that corridor. And one thing that we did purposefully is we actually moved that light rail corridor to the north side of the freeway. Whereas the median had been preserved for high capacity transit, we saw as we got beyond the 35th Avenue area, we'd be able to serve a lot more of the high-density residential south of McDowell, aligning the corridor. And with that, Marcus, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I think you bring up a lot of good points that we have to look at from a City of Phoenix standpoint and a Valley Metro standpoint as developing the transit center. One of the things that, to add on to what Darren was saying as far as the I-10 corridor, this was something that was looked at years before light rail was in the valley, looking to how do we bring some type of high capacity transit out to the West Valley. And as Darren stated, we looked at, okay, knowing that now we have the 202 connection and other things in the West Valley, how do we make the best design that would allow for the growth of the city as well as alleviating the traffic that we have along that corridor. One of the things that we did learn with our South Central extension, if you have followed that project, you'll see a lot of the angst or disagreement or negative input that we received about that project was from the business owners along that corridor. The business owners were very concerned that they would not be able to withstand the construction period of light rail, even though we have some very robust business assistance programs that we have implemented along with our light rail extensions. That was one of the concerns that we have for the business owners. The business owners really came out and expressed to us their need to be supported holistically throughout these processes and to make sure that they're able to stay whole. And so, when we look at things as our Cap I-10 Phase 1, and we look at economic development, we try to figure out areas that have potential for new growth without disturbing our existing businesses. Our goal in the city is to grow our economic development footprint and grow our economic footprint, our business footprint, but it's also to preserve the small businesses that we have within the city of Phoenix. It's very important to us that we keep these businesses strong, we keep them in place. And so when we look for opportunities, we really want to make sure that we're protecting those businesses that are there existing. So I hope that answers your question from a City of Phoenix standpoint. I don't know if Darren, you had some more that you wanted to add.
I have one more thing I'd like to add, Marcus, and I think you brought this up at Tuesday's meeting, is the City of Phoenix was very fortunate. In the last week, they were awarded a transit-oriented development grant by the federal government, and that was provided to this project really because we recognize there's a lot of opportunity, and so there's an application put together for that, so that'll be used toward this. And I know we're just in the initial throes of figuring out how that grant's going to work, and Marcus, if you have anything else to add on that, or you know more about that grant itself, that might be helpful to this discussion.
And so, thank you, Darren, for bringing that up. The TOD grant, we were able to utilize that grant for South Central to do some business assistance as well as land use planning. And through that process, even though the timing was very close to the timing of us starting construction, we were able to really make some valuable changes and really start to develop policy that will reflect the vision that the community has for that area. And so with us being able to obtain this FTA grant, which I would like to brag and say that, through a collaboration with Valley Metro, we were able to get the maximum funding for this grant. It really gives us a strong foundation for us to start the land use planning process for this project. So it has a very key, the big key element of it is the economic development piece of it. It's the land use development piece of it, and it's also equity and making sure that we do it in an equitable manner and that we're doing this in a way that's done with the community and not to the community, and that our end product reflects the needs and the desires of the community while keeping individuals and businesses in place. So we're really excited to be able to start that work and have that work roll into our environmental process and other planning processes that will guide the way that this project moves forward.
Okay, I think that answers my question. Thanks, guys.
Great, thank you. Marcus, thank you for the information. Haley.
Thanks, Terry. Ryan, I'm going to ask that you lower your hand by pressing *3. And our next question comes through the Q&A. It says the following. I live in the Oakland neighborhood. Why wasn't there door-to-door outreach before the original informational meetings in January where you collected the feedback to make the decision about the leading alternative C? The first door-to-door outreach we experienced was after the leading alternative was already established.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's something that we always work hard to try to find a good balance of as broad of distribution and notification as we can. And so working within our existing resources, typically for an area at this stage of a project where, there's not a selected route, and so the area is quite large, door hangers don't give us quite the notification bang for the buck, if you will. For example, our latest statistics for this meeting show that 3 people found out about the meeting through the door hangers, which is great, but we did 3,000 and I don't know, about 3,200 door hangers. So we try to balance out how to best get the information. So I am happy to say that we did have Oakland participating in the meetings. So I think word was getting out somehow. And when Jessica Bueno from the neighborhood requested the door hangers and thought that would be a good way to outreach to the neighborhood, then we added that we added that to the notification for this go around. So we're always looking for that good community input. There was one other neighborhood area that also said door hangers would be a good way to reach out to them. So we did door hangers there. So it's just kind of a balancing, but I am glad that you're here today and that we did have participation in January, and we'll continue to do whatever we can to make sure that we're being good stewards with our resources and also trying to get the word out as broadly as we possibly can. So thank you. I really appreciate your comment.
Can I add one thing to that as well?
Of course.
Okay. And I just wanted to add this from a process standpoint. Even though you may not have received the door hanger before the January process, we're definitely happy that you're able to join us today. And the input that you have today will be just as meaningful and just as powerful as if we would have received that information in January. As you can see by the way that we do our question and answer, even when back in January, we had in-person meetings, it was really just a collection of comments and answering questions right there on the spot. It wasn't I use this term a lot, it wasn't the making of the sausage, so to speak. No decisions or determinations have been made yet. We're basically saying from what we've heard from the last time versus when we're coming out now, these are the options, and this is the option that has kind of risen to the top in the comments that we received thus far. Now that we're doing another round of community engagement and really making sure that we get that participation, things could change. We could get comments that are pushing a different option forward as the preferred option. And so, and it's not just the comments. We also have to look at a constructability. We have to look at a planning. We also have to look at stakeholders as far as property that is needed for these things, and also funding. And so there's a lot of different pieces that go into this. But I want you to know that your input and feedback today is just as powerful and impactful as it would have been in January. And so please take this time to ask and provide as much feedback as you possibly can.
Great, good. Thank you, Marcus. That was good information to add, so I appreciate it. Let me see here. Haley, you have some other questions coming through?
Yes, thanks, Terry. So we have a few users who've raised their hands indicating that they'd like to speak. I'm going to go ahead and go through that. And again, just appreciate your time and patience as we work through these. We have a few in the queue. So user Rev Joan Gray, I see that you've raised your hand. I'm going to unmute your line. When I do that, you'll be live with our panelists. And you've been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just introduce myself quickly and what I do and where I'm at, so that you know what my involvement is in this plan that you're working on. I am the executive director of Phoenix Inner City Kids, and we have a community center that's located at the corner of Jefferson and 9th Ave. And so as I've looked at your options, they're very concerning for me because of our location. But let me tell you first what we do. Phoenix Inner City Kids is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to bring hope to inner city at youth risk and families. Hope to us is an acrostic that means help, opportunities, partnership, and encouragement with the community. We have been working in the community now for more than 30 years. We had our foundings with Teen Challenge of Arizona. In 2011, we purchased the building that's on 20 South 9th Ave, which is the corner of Jefferson and 9th Ave. We have made significant upgrades in this building, well over $300,000 to upgrade it and make it a pride in the community and a place where inner city youth and families do come and consider it their home. So as we're looking at these plans that you've made, and I'm a strong proponent of the light rail, but in looking at what will happen if you go with the option that you have, is that the light rail will cross directly in front of our building. Our main entrance to the building is directly on Jefferson. And so what will happen, as it is, we had to have a variance for our building. We have a 0 parking variance. And so parking is extremely limited because of the business community, of course, and the location. So in order for us to be able to continue to operate our facility, our community center, to have the light rail pass directly in front of us and cut off even the 0 parking that we have would absolutely be disastrous for our programs and the things that we do. So I just wanted to put that in as an objection to C. I'm not sure, I haven't familiarized with the ABC as well as I ought, but I saw that there was one option that crosses over to Washington from 8th Ave. That would be the one that for our continued ability to operate in the facility that we've heavily invested in, that would be the best option for us. And I just wanted to voice that at this point anyway and have it in the record.
Certainly, that's very good input. And what I would like to do, and Haley, maybe you can guide me here, is I think that we would love to follow up with you and talk specifically with you about the property. As everyone knows, that's a huge component of the evaluation is, what type of impacts may or may not occur with certain alternatives or route options. So we'd love to circle back with you and really dig into the details and have the planning team look at the property more closely. And so Haley, how can we do that? Can she send you her phone number?
Sure.
Great.
So, Joan, it looks like you've joined on a mobile device, and if you look at the screen, you'll see that I have the instructions for submitting a question up on the screen for you to see. If you can send your contact information using the Q&A feature, I'll save that privately. It won't be displayed on the screen. Nobody else will see it. But if you wouldn't mind sharing an email address or phone number, a way for us to get a hold of you so that we can further the conversation, that would be great. Again, the Q&A instructions are on the screen now. It looks like you've got the mobile app as the device that you're using. So if you have any questions on that, you can raise your hand again. I can walk you through it. But you are still unmuted, so if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time on the Q&A function.
Okay, I'm fine with questions. I would just, I will send you that information. Would love to talk to you more.
Great.
Awesome. Great. And thanks, Amy. Sorry. Let me go ahead and give the phone number out for anyone else who might have some questions and wants to contact us directly after the meeting or whenever. You can reach us at 602-744-5579. That is a project phone number that you can call, and we can follow up with you on any outstanding questions or other things you might have. So I kind of took that over, Darren. Did you have anything you wanted to add on this particular property?
Yeah. Sure. I wanted to add just one thing. Ms. Gray, thank you. We really appreciate your comment. I did want to make clear for you and for others on the phone too, is that we're still early in the planning process. So our task right now is certainly to select alignment, basically which streets should we be operating this phase one on. But in terms of where the light rail, the buses, the traffic lanes, the bike lanes, and how they fall within the actual street, we're still a ways off from that. And so having these conversations helps us when we're trying to fit all of those items into the street corridor. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you. And there'll be plenty more opportunities to help us shape the actual alignment of the light rail in whichever option we select. So thank you. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. Okay. Next.
Sure. So, Joan, I'm just going to ask that you lower your hand since we've addressed your questions and comments. Really appreciate your time. Our next caller is Jean. Jean, I see that you've raised your hand over the phone. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. When I do that, you're going to be live with our panelists, and you'll hear a message on your phone that indicates you've been unmuted. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Okay. Thank you again for calling on me once again. I wanted to make a comment about the gentleman who was asking, why the northern edge of I-10 and not, say, McDowell Road or Thomas. At the time when this was all being planned, this I-10 extension, we had a number of home property owners asking for rezoning, and each one of them were along between I-10 and McDowell Road in the Maryville Village. They were all being told by the planning department that they were going to be needing to use TOD. Of course, you all know what TOD does, but if someone's on listening to this and doesn't know, it's of course transit-oriented design. So there are a number of projects that were in the works, could be in the works. They all are looking at the idea that light rail would be going down the I-10 corridor on the northern edge instead of on McDowell or Thomas. One thing is very interesting. Last night on PBS, one of the PBS stations, they talked about the Pearl District in Portland, Oregon, and their use of TOD in that development a number of years ago. And one of the things that came out was the fact that the gentleman who was I guess one of you on this panel was telling the host of this program that the number one reason why they went with, in this case, they went with a trolley car situation, but it did have tracks, that developers like permanency. If they know its light rail is going to go down I-10 on the north edge, they know that the city of Phoenix isn't going to change the route. They're not going to change the times like they can with the bus. They can, there are times when and so on and so forth. And because of that, developers tend to be willing to spend their money on something they know that's going to be permanent. In other words, if their development's going to be a TOD design, that transit, mass transit, in this case light rail, is going to be there for quite a number of years, and decades actually. I remember when we didn't have light rail, and I had my mother-in-law used to remember when we had the trolley cars, and you know, like the one that's in front of the old Arizona Historical Museum and next to the downtown library. And so, but that's one of the reasons why the village on its own, and whenever anyone has come for a rezoning case and have their plans for vacant property on the northern edge of I-10, we have insisted that that TOD would be part of the deal. So thank you again for allowing me to speak, and this has been a very interesting meeting. I've learned some things about now I have only one question. I remember a number of years ago, and now it might even be several years ago, that the St. Matthews neighborhood was really concerned about the light rail. I'm of the impression that it still will go across the I-17 on Van Buren. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Darren,
correct.
do you answer your question?
Yeah, I was unmuting myself, sorry. Yes, that's correct. And again, that's part of phase 2. So as the project extends west of approximately 18th Avenue along Van Buren, yes, the idea is to remain on Van Buren to the I-17 frontage road.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and that's all I wanted to say about the effect of light rail coming to the west side of town. It's like I say, the developers are itching to build TOD design, and we'd like to see it. In fact, if I remember right correctly, from the beginning of all this, I should have been able to get on that light rail as of today, but I'll settle for it later in my life if I have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Haley, who's up next?
Sure. So we've got a few questions that have been submitted through Q&A, and I'll go ahead and start with those. All right. The first one, is workforce development being considered to reduce residents to employment trips?
Can you repeat that?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Is workforce development being considered to reduce residents to employment trips?
I'm not sure. I probably am not going to interpret this correctly. So if you were the person who asked that question, if you need to clarify for me, because I'm probably not going to answer it correctly. So a couple of things. Workforce development in terms of project construction is definitely an element of Valley Metro's programs. We have a very robust workforce development program that's getting underway. It actually is underway for the South Central Extension, and anticipate incorporating those types of programs on our other future projects to take advantage of and to provide opportunities for the local labor force. But I have a feeling you might be talking about commuter usage of the line. And so, Darren, do you have anything to add on that?
I'm not sure if I do, and same as you, I really don't want to misinterpret what's being asked here, but maybe if Mr. Gray, if you could maybe elaborate on your question in the Q&A, that might be helpful to this group.
Yeah, that would be great. Sorry about that. If you wouldn't mind, if there's something that we missed, we'd like to answer if we can.
So Darren,
Haley,
Darren, could you quickly discuss how employment centers are taken into a factor when we look at these alignments?
Sure. Thank you, Marcus. So I guess I'll start by saying, if you remember that very first slide we showed you, showing the regional transportation system that showed all the future high-capacity transit corridors, those were really established to connect the major employment locations, as you are well aware, downtown Tempe, North Phoenix, downtown Phoenix, but also future activity centers. So for the 79th Avenue corridor, or Capital I-10 West, when it was conceived originally, there was a need seen to access the West Phoenix area. And of course, 79th Avenue made the most sense at that point. Now, to Marcus's point, one of the questions is Desert Sky Mall a large enough center to connect? And so that's what we're looking at now. So that's a factor into connecting there. We all know we have a concert pavilion along 79th Avenue. And so when we're looking at these types of projects, we're looking to see which alignments will have the most ridership. And so those draws are those activity centers that are not just employment, but think about, say, downtown Phoenix with the baseball stadium, the basketball stadium, Tempe with the ASU, not only the college, but the football games. So everything that you could see that would draw that ridership, that comes into play when we're planning out these types of projects. Does that kind of go along with what you're thinking, Marcus? Okay.
Well, he said, yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought he saw I gave him the thumbs up. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I saw it.
Great. Okay, Haley, other questions?
Sure.
I want to try to get as many as we can in here. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. We'll start with this Q&A. Please describe the type of collaborations with government agencies, energy providers, and community members that will be needed to make the transition from surface streets to the I-10 alignment.
All right, sure. Thank you. And this is a great question. They've all been great, but this one sincerely, there's a lot that's been gone on to this. So let me just start by saying, as Marcus and others have described, this project has been planned for quite some time now. And as we go out of the downtown environment, north along the I-17 frontage road and out to the West Valley, the major stakeholder is the Arizona Department of Transportation, so ADOT. And this project falls entirely within the ADOT right-of-way as we go west of I-17. So they have been an amazing partner with Valley Metro. We've met with them countless numbers of times to secure that right-of-way. And in the same respect, they've also helped us to identify the types of issues that we should be thinking about as we design this project. And there are several of them, and maybe our my colleague Joe Rakowski can chime in, but one of the things that I can think of that you may or may not be aware of is pump stations. So along the I-10 west of downtown, about every mile there is a pump station to essentially do, as I described, if the freeway were to flood, those pump stations take that water out of the freeway and pump it into this drainage channel on the north side. And so we need to incorporate in our design how we locate our project in relation to these major, I guess, infrastructure components related to I-10. So ADOT really is one of the major key partners that we collaborate with. One of the other ones, and this goes to kind of the community stakeholders, community members, the cemeteries. If you know, just southwest of the I-10, I-17 stack, there's the Beth L. and Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery, and we've met with the owners of that cemetery several times now. And what they've told us is they're in favor of this project because it actually shuts off the access along the I-17 frontage road. And that was key to our decision, because if we're going to take away that right-of-way or that access, we want to make sure it was okay with that property owner, and sure enough, it is. And then you mentioned other things such as energy providers, utility providers, same thing. This project is going to be a long process, and so Valley Metro employs individuals that specialize solely in utilities, and those people are tasked with working with utility providers throughout the valley. And that's, again, an ongoing process to make sure we're able to collaborate and make sure there are no issues as we go forward. Hopefully that answers the question. Joe, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
Hi, this is Joe. No, I think you covered it well, Darren.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you for the question. I know we're bumping up against 11, but I know we've got a few outstanding questions, so we are going to continue to go through those questions. And if you've already, I know there's a couple of folks who have commented or questioned previously, and we will try to circle back to you as soon as we get through the folks who we haven't heard from yet. So, Haley. Again, make sure to check out the online public meeting where you can provide comments and questions at any time, and that's valleymetro.org/capital. So please take advantage of that as well.
Okay, Terry. So from the Q&A, we have a question that says, how has this plan incorporated an analysis of individuals or groups with limited mobility? The stop placement along the I-10 corridor appears to connect with auto-centric nodes. Is there any research that supports TOD adjacency to freeway interchanges without compromising the performance of one or both transportation nodes?
Would you like me to start, Terry? Sure. And I'll definitely turn it over to my colleague, Joe Rakowski, who's very familiar with a similar type of operating system in Denver. But one thing that I'll mention is, as we started to look at this project along the freeway corridor, we certainly wanted to look at how things are done throughout the country for these types of projects. Two of the concrete examples we really looked at were in Los Angeles and then also, as I mentioned, in Denver. The other thing I'll mention too is, in terms of the station access, just as I mentioned for phase one, where the track's going to be put in the alignment, station access is an ongoing planning process. So for that component, we really look to work with the community to make sure we're developing a project that is accessible to all, basically, regardless of the environment you're in. And we certainly understand that the station, for example, in the middle of the freeway at 35th Avenue is going to be a unique situation, but it has been done at other places, so we want to bring the best practices from those projects. Joe, would you like to talk about the Denver example in terms of station access?
Sure. As Darren noted, freeways, especially medians, sometimes end up as transit alignments. They're usually good for the alignment and difficult for the station access, as we've been discussing. So we are on the north side where we feel that our stations can be adjacent to the development between the north side of the freeway and McDowell. The Denver case, they're also along the side of one of the freeways. Now, Denver doesn't have as rich a north, south, east, west grid that Phoenix has an advantage with. But the bus access will also be another way to help provide access for people with limited mobility, as well as putting in special close-in parking for those people. And then as part of the TOD effort that Darren and Marcus were talking about before, I think that'll give us a chance to really drill into some of the accessibility interests at the stations. I think that's the main thing I can add right now.
Okay, anyone else from the team?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Darren.
Okay.
Okay.
So it doesn't look like we have any questions that have been submitted. I've got a few comments that I'll read through that were submitted through the Q&A. And these are just statements from folks who've submitted through the Q&A. So the first one says, when the light rail went in Salt Lake City between the north and south freeway lanes, it was a great public transit advertising. Every morning, as frustrated drivers fought traffic to get downtown, the light rail would go blowing by. Ridership went up. The next one says, as a West Phoenix resident, I prefer light rail over rapid bus, because West Phoenix should be part of a regional system that ultimately connects with the sports complex at Westplex that includes the Cardinal Stadium and Coyotes area. The next one says, this is not a question, just a follow-up. FYI, WebEx didn't ask me how I found out about the meeting, so I wasn't counted in those statistics. Also, thank you for clearly stating the leading alternative is not final and input is still being considered. Okay, we did have a question come through, so I'm going to go ahead and address that, if that's okay, Terry. Got some time?
Absolutely, yes.
Great, thank you. What efforts will there be that include contextual and cultural tie-ins to the different communities that this project will serve?
Thank you. Good question. The first thing I think of are stations, but Darren, I'm sure you can answer that.
Yeah, in fact, I think, we have a lot of lessons learned from the current projects going on. I was actually going to turn it over to Marcus, who's been engaged in the South Central project, maybe talk about how it's been incorporated there.
So what I will say is culture is a very big piece of our city of Phoenix as a whole, and we try to make sure that it's ingrained and woven into the fabric of everything that we do in the city of Phoenix, knowing that the city of Phoenix as a municipality, we're here to serve our community and reflect the culture of our community. And so with that, working on our projects with Valley Metro, one of the ways that we have done this in the past is through our arts program. This is not something that is covered by a federal piece of the project. This is something that's actually done separately, but it's been such an important part of how Valley Metro does business, and that's how the city of Phoenix does business, that we donate 1% of the construction costs to an art program that we normally try to make sure, while we do have participation from artists that are national artists as well as regional and local artists, that even when we have national artists who come in and participate in those programs, a big piece of that is working with the community, working with we call them a SARC, which is it's a collaborative of local business and residents, owners, and stakeholders who actually work with the artists to make sure that the artwork that is incorporated into our design is reflective of the community and reflective of the story and the history of that community, as well as a big piece of the TOD that we're able to do with South Central and will be able to do with our CapitolI 10 project. It's not just the land use planning of it, but when we look at land use planning and look at what type of elements we want to see come to an area, we look at what the culture of the area is and how do we not only preserve that culture, but bring in business and bring in development that supports that existing culture. How do we bring things to the area that support the community that's there currently, and that culture that's there, and respects that culture that's there, and highlights that culture that's in those areas. And so you'll see a lot of those nodes, a lot of nods to those things as we look at our South Central project, as well as we do our planning process for our CapitolI 10, making sure that we connect with the needs of that community, the way that the community functions. One example that comes to mind right now, just because it's going to be on our city council agenda July 1st, is a community garden that we have with 19 North along our 19th Avenue. There was opportunity there for a parcel of land that we had to purchase to do the project, that we worked with the community to start a community garden there. That's something that was really pushed forward from the 19 North organization, and we were able to partner with them and really make sure that this is something that we're doing that will add value to that neighborhood, and not just to a transit system, but the neighborhood as a whole. We feel as we do these projects that we become part of those neighborhoods, and it really is about being a partnership with the community and not just an infrastructure project. So I hope that answers those questions.
Thanks, Marcus. So I know that we are over time. However, I think we've got 2 more questions that, if you all don't mind, I would like to try to get to. Again, if we're not able to get to your question, please go to the website, valleymetro.org/capital, and there's a comment button at the top right of every single page. There are also some specific survey questions. Please provide your input. It's very important for us. So Haley, can we grab those last 2?
Sure. So the last question in the Q&A, I'm going to do my best to interpret this. I believe the question is, what type of development is thought of at light rail stations? Apartments, office parks, commercial?
Aaron or Joe, maybe?
Sure, I can start and anybody else from the team can chime in. So I will say, you know, it's pretty much unique to the surrounding area. I wouldn't say there's just kind of a one-size-fits-all, but there are different aspects that we look at when we're looking at the type of development. And we've talked about this already a few times now, is Phoenix does have this transit-oriented development grant, and that will certainly look really closely at each of those station areas. But when you hear TOD, generally that does make reference to those areas that are highly populated from a residential standpoint. So for those, you're looking at the types of, let's say, multi-residential types of complexes. But I would just say that along the station areas, there's certainly all types of developments that could be put in place as part of those. Marcus, you may want to answer a little bit of a definitive answer for the Phoenix standpoint.
Well, one thing I would like to add is I think you did a great job of explaining that when we look at rail or look at any type of high-capacity transit, we really want to make sure that we have density. Density is really how we are able to capitalize on the investment. But that density doesn't always have to come in the form of residents. It can come in the form of employment centers. It can come in the form of entertainment centers. It can come in the form of educational centers. It also can come in the form of medical centers, hospitals, and things of that nature. And so there is not a one-size-fits-all. As Darren was saying, it's really about what supports that community. As we see down in South Central, we've had a lot of requests for medical centers and access to medical and to access to healthier foods. And so, you know, those are some of the things that when we look at areas of opportunity, we try to, you know, focus those things. And so as we work with the community in the West Valley, it'll be that same type of process of looking what makes the most sense, what's the biggest need, and then how do we accomplish that while also increasing, you know, the density of the area.
Okay, thank you both. I think we have one caller. Okay.
One call, yes. So Kyle, thank you so much for your patience this morning. I know you've been waiting for a little bit. I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. When I do that, you'll be live with our panelists. Kyle,
Hi there.
You've been unmuted. Hi.
I just have one quick comment. So I'm kind of concerned that we're now tossing around the idea of a BRT system along the I-10 versus light rail. In addition to the economic development opportunities that Jean kind of mentioned earlier in the call, I think that we should really be focused on the experience of the rider. And so I think that for those who have the privilege of choice in transportation, the idea of having to take a bus and then transfer to light rail and then potentially walk or scooter or what have you at the end of your trip becomes something that is less appealing. And so I think we really want to get people who would otherwise be driving this route to make the transition to taking light rail. And I think that the idea of transferring and all of that, even though it might not seem that complicated and confusing to those of us who do take light rail, I think it makes it a little bit harder to stomach for people who could otherwise just drive because it feels easier to them.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And again, thank you for your patience. I know this is a new format for everybody. We're used to having the opportunity to meet with you all in person. So I really appreciate, as does the rest of the team, you taking the time to learn more about this project and participate in this event today. So just another reminder, the website, the online public meeting is open through June 30th. So please, you'll find out a lot more details. Please log on, provide additional input if you'd like. We are going to, like I said, keep that open through June 30th, and a recording of this session, as well as the earlier session that we conducted on Tuesday, will also be posted to the website. If you don't have computer access or have some other issue or some other request, again, you can call us, the number listed here, 602-744-5579. With that, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much and have a great day.